How's it going, everybody? When you get your first reptile, sooner or later, breeding it comes to mind. Today we're going to go over some tips and tricks on how to take care of multiple animals to make it easier and cheaper. Tip 1. Housing. Space is key when keeping a lot of geckos, and when you keep a lot of them, your best bet is to go with a racking system. We only use racks for babies, and we use PVC or acrylic enclosures for our adults. However, we ensure that all of our cages are stackable so that we can utilize all the space in our reptile room. Racking systems work best because there are no lids to worry about. No fumbling around, no having to worry that, did you actually snap that lid shut? We also keep clutch mates together. We keep clutch mates together in bins to both save on space as well as to ensure that record keeping is a lot easier. Tip 2. Keeping up humidity. With New Caledonian geckos, as hatchlings, your main concern should be the humidity levels within their cages. The way we have been able to accomplish this is by using rack systems with bins with little ventilation. Typically, there's enough of a gap between the bin and the rack to ensure that there's enough airflow within the actual enclosure, but it also ensures that you can keep the humidity at proper levels. Now, this is how we handle our babies. In your area, it might be completely different. In regards to humidity, we keep a bowl of water in with all of our reptiles, as well as a humid hide. It is a common misconception that New Caledonian geckos only drink from spray droplets. Speaking from experience, I have witnessed both hatchlings, as well as juveniles, as well as adults drinking from water bowls. So it's not really necessary to consistently, if you're able to actually keep the humidity up, to consistently spray. With our system, we only really have to spray once every 3 days. Tip 3. Pre-measure your feedings. The way we've been able to increase our efficiency is by specifically weighing our food before feeding it. So when we had 10 geckos, we would see exactly how much it took to feed those 10 geckos, so that every time we went to go feed, we would weigh the same amount. So as an example, 10 geckos would be 10 grams of pangea powder or Clark's Gecko diet or Rapashi. And what we would do is have them pre-measured in cups so that each feeding would be a lot faster. Another way to do this is to pre-measure and then mix it in a squeeze bottle so that it's easier to feed them, and you can just go with a cup, spray it into the cup or squeeze it into a cup and just put it right into the cage. Tip 4. Pre-count your cups. What we like to do is once a week we pre-count all of our deli cups. So if we have 100 cages to feed, we will count 100 deli cups and stack them on the table so that at least when we go to feed, we don't have to be sitting there counting or be short when we're feeding. That's probably the easiest way we can say it, is just take the cups, pre-count them, and feed with them. We only do that once a week, but it does increase our efficiency during the week. Now, take into consideration that I have a full-time job, I have a family at home, so every minute counts. Tip 5. Use a large squeeze bottle to feed. What we like to do is use squeeze bottles for feeding days. After we mix our diet, we transfer it all over to a squeeze bottle. Typically we mix in a blender. Use a blender. That's another tip on its own. On our feeding tray, we don't actually pour the gecko food right into the cup and then bring it over to the cages. What we like to do is just keep the cups on a tray, squeeze it, and put it directly into the cage. The reason I say this is because there's been multiple times where I went to go feed, and what ends up happening is I'm a little clumsy and food ends up all over the floor and it's wasted. So what we like to do is you just take the cup, you fill it, and you put it right into the cage. It actually increases efficiency as well because you're not doing things twice. So you're only opening up the cage once, you're throwing out the cup, you're putting in the new cup, and you're squeezing the food, and you're done. This way, also you don't have to pre-measure portions. What I like to do is, depending on the gecko in the cage, say it's a Lichianus, I like to fill up the actual cup to a certain depth. So what I like to do is put the cup in, I see it's a Leachianus cage, I'll fill it up to that specific depth. Now if it's a crested gecko, they don't need as much, so I only put it in a little bit. So it gets a little bit confusing when you start keeping multiple species. However, if you do this method, you can just look at the cage and be like, okay, this is a small crested gecko, put it in the cup, only a little bit of food. It works the same way for hatchlings. When you have larger hatchlings, of course, they're going to eat more. You don't want to put too much food in. What I've noticed is you usually get fruit fly problems if you put in too much food, because then it sits for 2 days. We don't have time to be switching out cups every single day, so what we like to do is we switch it out on feeding day, so it's every other day. So we only feed enough so that they only leave a little bit. We don't like to make sure that they eat every single last bite, because that also means that they could be underfed. Tip 6, water bowl filling. Instead of filling cups and bringing them over, what we like to do is use a bucket full of water and just dip our water bowls / deli cups, whatever you end up using, and put it right into the cage. This saves about 15 minutes per day. And that's not to mention, if you're a little bit clumsy, then that could save you about half an hour of a cleanup. Tip 7, record keeping. It's really hard to keep track of where all of your geckos came from, but it is important to track lineage. Not only does this help with you knowing where each gecko came from, but also it helps with sales. Currently, the market is shifting, and everybody is starting to care about lineage because they don't want to be inbreeding. We use our business cards as labels. So what we do is we get a business card, it has a blank white back. We use our label maker, we'll print off the name, hatch date, the lineage, and we stick it to the back and we laminate the card. From there, what we end up doing is we use a sticker system as well, where red is for a female, blue is for a male, yellow is for unsexed. This way we can track also the sex of our geckos. This also helps with sales, because when you're selling your gecko, you can give them that exact business card which has your details on it, but it also has the details of the gecko on it. If you laminate the cards like we do, what we like to do is use a dry erase marker, and we write down their weights as well on that specific card with the dry erase. This helps with tracking their weight and their growth as well. When measuring weights, what we like to do is we only measure it once a month, but sometimes you forget. So what we do is we have a whiteboard in our gecko room, and what we do is we just write down the actual date that we measure the weight of our geckos. We like to measure geckos on different days depending on their species. So crested geckos will be on a Wednesday, Leachianus will be on the Thursday, and fat-tailed geckos will be on the Friday. We like to do this specifically because the amount of geckos we do have here, it would take too long just to do everybody at once, so doing sections is a little bit better. So on our whiteboard, we'll say on December the 1st, we measured crested geckos, December the 2nd was Leachianus, December the 3rd was Chihuahua, and December the 4th was fat tails. So that's typically how we keep track of that. What we then do is we send a calendar invite to ourselves to have a reoccurring reminder that we should be checking the weights every single month on that exact date. Sometimes times may shift a couple of days, but we always usually keep to that schedule. Tip 8, cage cleaning. With the same Google Calendar, we set our cage cleaning days, but we only do full cleanings once a month. However, we do spot cleanings every single feeding day. So if we notice that there's a lot of poop buildup, say in our fat tails enclosures, what we end up doing is we'll take out the paper towel, toss it out, put in a new paper towel, and then at the end of the month when we have our cage cleaning days, we'll do a full disinfecting clean. This helps keep them sanitary. Not only that, is it cuts down on the amount of time that we're spending cleaning cages. Once a month is sufficient for us, at least. And with the spot cleaning, that helps maintain it so that they're still in clean environments. Tip 9, misting. What we like to do is use a misting system. So with all of our adults, they are on a Mist King system. This is probably the best way you can do it. When you have 6, 8, 10 adults, it doesn't really matter how many you have. That's one less thing you have to worry about. So all you have to really do is check your reservoir, ensure that it's full, and you know that every single day at 8 p.m. or whenever you set your time for, the misting system will go off. The biggest issue with misting systems, however, is do not use regular tap water. They get that calcium buildup on the misting nozzles, which then doesn't allow them to dissipate the water how they should be. So ensure you're using reverse osmosis water with your misting systems. Tip 10, be creative. Now, I'm saying be creative with purchasing your items. Keeping geckos in large numbers gets very, very expensive. And you got to get creative so that you can either make more money, save more money, and just ensure that you're taking care of your geckos properly. When we were starting out, before we started our own product line and started carrying gecko food and things like that, what we did was we approached people, such as ourselves, and we approached them with the thought that, okay, I have 50 geckos at home. However, I can't really pay retail price for a 16 ounce of Clark's Gecko diet every single month. What can I do to save that money? So what I would do is I would approach, say, Clark's Gecko diet, which at the time was Gecko Brothel, now it's Dan Dumango Geckos. What we would do is we approach them and say, you know, can I wholesale your product? Now, a lot of people don't wholesale to breeders. All they will do is wholesale to brick and mortar stores. However, you can still approach them and see, not only is, you know, you don't necessarily have to get wholesale pricing. However, what you can get is bulk pricing. So say you're going to be purchasing 10 pounds in one day. Not necessarily that much, but say you're going to be buying 10 pounds in one day. You approach them, instead of just buying it on their website, send them an email, say, I want to buy 10 pounds of your Pangea gecko food. Can I get a deal? Most of the time, they will say yes. Quantity is always better than just sending individual sales out. So, at least if you approach us and you say, I want to buy 100 ledges, we're going to sell it to you for relatively cheap. Also, don't forget that dollar stores are great. We actually furnish all of our geckos, well, all of the geckos as well as our adult geckos and baby geckos with dollar store plants. Now, what you need to be careful with dollar store plants is that they might have glitter on them, they might have cobwebs, things like that, so just ensure that you disinfect them properly. When you do that, the plants are perfect. There's no reason to go out and spend $8, $9 per plant for your gecko's cage. If you go to the dollar store, I know that at my dollar store they sell them for $1. You can just get a bundle of leaves and use that specifically for your geckos. Finally, make your own cages. It's great to have matching cages. It's great to have everything working. You know, buy used, buy anything that you can get on Kijiji. You can just use Rubbermaid bins and convert them into cages just to save on cost. But not only that, you can make your own PVC cages for relatively inexpensive. We've made a video on how to make your own, and you'll probably find it right here. So you can go take a look and see if that's something you want to do. We found that building a 12 by 12 by 18 using this method only really costs $25, $30. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to drop a like down below, as well as subscribe for future content.